Welcome to All Things ACC Podcast with your host, Patrick O'Brien. Welcome to another All Things ACC Saturday morning where we talk some ACC football coming up today and also a little bit of college football and some other games that you kind of want to watch there. We're going to jump right into this on Saturday morning here, talk a little bit about the game last night. Close one, closer than many expected for Louisville versus Duke. The Cardinals were able to prevail 24-14. Duke got that fourth quarter call that really hurt them, roughing the kicker. Eventually Louisville, 2 plays later, got the Lamar Jackson touchdown. Eventually to seal the deal, 24-14. Kind of a subpar kind of game for the Cardinals, but still a win against a Duke conference opponent. Duke played well on defensively, containing Lamar Jackson. For the most part, he still had over 140 yards rushing and 180 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. But overall, good win, still solid win on a Friday night on national television for the Cardinals. And now Duke still winless in the conference, and they hope to, hopefully can learn from this, show that they, can compete against, a caliber kind of team like Louisville, and bounce back next week there. But now we're going to look into our Saturday matchups. We got several on the board here this morning. The first one we're going to look at is a 12 o'clock kickoff. That'll be on ESPN. NC State at Clemson. The last 4 games, the Wolfpack has been giving up about 46 points per game against Clemson, all losses. The strong point I would say for the Wolfpack, on the defensive end would be in the trenches. They've been, making their money right there, with the defensive line, getting in the backfield, something that they're going to have to do against Deshaun Watson in that passing attack, along with the run game, stop the run game with Gallman. Their secondary has been a little suspect at times. They've allowed their opponent's quarterbacks to complete about 60% of their passes, something Deshaun Watson's going to be looking for, with hitting Mike Williams and company out there. So look for Watson to test the linebackers and secondary in this one. I would say that they're going to probably attack early with that kind of secondary, see if they can put them on their heels, jump out early. NC State has a tendency of getting out early in this one, and kind of forcing the opponents to play their game, try to come back, have a comeback mentality early on there. A player that I'm going to be looking at for the Wolfpack there. There's Nyheim Hines. Both last year, if you remember, there was a back and forth. I think they scored, both teams scored 2 or 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. I mean, it just went back and forth back in Raleigh. Nyheim Hines was a big part of that, especially on special teams and offense. Look for him. He'll be a key for quarterback Finley, who, I don't think he's experienced a kind of a place like Death Valley. So there'll be a new kind of experience for him, but Nyheim Hines will be a nice, part of their offense. Trying to get him the ball, get him in open space, along with, controlling the line of scrimmage, the rushing attack with Matt Days. They had a solid game in the rain last week against Notre Dame. One key stat looking at is NC State is 9th in rushing defense, and they're also averaging 182 yards. So that kind of piggybacks on what I was just saying, that they have to win the line on the trenches on defense, and that I really think that the rushing game is going to have to be a big part if NC State wants to win this one. I just don't think they have enough, and I think with the crowd, ESPN, noon kickoff, great weather down in Clemson. I think Clemson secures this wins again and make it 5 in a row against the Wolfpack. Next game, looking at is the Georgia Tech versus Georgia Southern, an out of conference kind of matchup here. Both teams really need to win. Georgia Tech's been stumbling; they've lost 3 in a row. Georgia Southern, I think they've lost 2 in a row. This will be a kind of a running attack kind of game there. Obviously the Yellow Jackets do like to run the ball. They've done it under Paul Johnson. They will continue to do that. Georgia Southern does the same thing. They both average over 200 yards on the ground. But the one key thing to kind of look at with this one is that both defenses are suspect in the passing game. With quarterback Thomas right there for the Yellow Jackets, I would be surprised if they kind of test maybe the secondary, in the passing game, maybe get some big plays when they can. But both defenses are suspect in the secondary, with two teams that like to run the ball for pretty much most of the 75% of the game, and you get a chance to throw it. You can get some big plays out of that. I think Georgia Tech will eventually win this one just by sheer talent. But Georgia Southern the last time that these two play, were actually the only time they actually met was back in 2014. It was actually a close one, 42-38 win by the Yellow Jackets, and that was the same year that they went 11-3. Turnovers could be a key part in this one. Georgia Southern is averaging 0.5 turnover margin per game in the positive, while Georgia Tech is on the other end and the negative end. So Georgia Southern definitely has to get turn the ball over, and the Yellow Jackets have done that before. Just take a look at the Miami game. Young Miami team was able to score two touchdowns, something Georgia Southern would love to do, but I think the turnover game would have to be a key in this one. Then we're going to head up to the Virginia, Pittsburgh at Virginia. Pittsburgh is coming off a solid, strong win against Georgia Tech, while Virginia has actually won their last 2 games. One of them was against Duke. I think the defense is going to be the question marks in this one. Pittsburgh has given up over 300 yards passing. It's something that Kurt Benkert, he's thrown for almost 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns. He wants to throw the ball. You just look at against Duke, he was able to really shred the Blue Devils defense in the passing game, something that the Cavaliers will want to do, and we'll look at against Pittsburgh there. The UVA defense, they've really been suspect all year. They've given up over 471 yards total yards to their opponents. Pittsburgh will be a run-heavy kind of defense, so they'll look to attack that questionable defense there, control the line of scrimmage, control the time of possession, something they were able to do. Just take a look at what they were able to do, even though it was a loss. Look at their loss against North Carolina when they were able to control the time of possession, limit UNC's possessions in the game. Even though they still lost the game, that would be probably the same recipe that they're going to be looking for against UVA. But the Cavaliers don't have near the kind of offense power that someone like North Carolina does. But in the passing game, they'll look to find attack their weaknesses, look for the big plays. Benkert, I could certainly see having a 300-yard kind of game, but it'll be determined by the amount of possessions that they have. If Pittsburgh is able to control the time of the clock there, UVA will have a hard time, getting their chances, and I think eventually Pittsburgh will win this one. I'm picking probably a 10-point victory on the road, but both defenses will be the question mark heading into this matchup that I see. Next one we're looking at is Wake Forest at Florida State. Obviously, Florida State got the big win against Miami last week. Wake Forest has lost 4 straight against the Seminoles. Last year was probably the closest one between those 4. Wake Forest lost 24-16. In that game, Dalvin Cook actually only touched the ball 3 times before he got hurt. But when you look at the stats, I had to go back and look at his stats before he got injured. He had 2 touches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. Long was over 80 yards in that one. I think he'll be a main factor again in this one. They're going to get him the ball, get him out in the open. He's done an excellent job in both rushing the ball and catching passes out of the backfield. I think he could easily have a good, over 200-yard kind of performance total. But he will definitely be getting the rock in this one. Another interesting fact to look at, though, is Wake Forest comes in at 5-1, Florida State 4-2. This one I got from David Hale from ESPN. When these two teams meet and the Demon Deacons actually have a better record than the Seminoles, Wake Forest is actually 3-0 since 2006. So just maybe a little trend on that one to look at heading this game. I think Florida State is a favorite by 21 points or more. That defense has been solid. They cannot allow Florida State to get off to a strong, quick start with Cook and Francois. I think it will be a little bit closer than the 21 points. I just have a feeling. But like last year, they had Kendall Hinton and company there. He was able to be move around in the pocket. He had over 200 yards passing. Had a solid game in the rushing attack as well. We'll see what kind of game plan the Demon Deacons have. I think they have to get their young running backs, some carries, get them moving north and south, pick it up easy third down, kind of attempts there and conversions. I think this will be a little bit closer than 21, but I still think Florida State being at home, I just don't see Wake Forest coming away with the win. But I think it'll be a little bit closer than a 21-point favor that the stat line has. So look for that one. That'll be an interesting one in ACC. Another one that's really caught the eye of several people will be at North Carolina at Miami. If you remember last year by chance, North Carolina simply dominated the Hurricanes, embarrassed them pretty much throughout the game, and their 59-21 win. The Hurricanes actually owned a 7-5 home record against the Heels. But one thing you have to kind of look at is the shoulder injury for Brad Kaya. The offensive line is really going to have to protect their quarterback, which might make me think that their run game will pick up a little bit, something that the Heels have struggled. They're averaging over opponents against the Heels are averaging about 232 yards on the ground. Something head coach Mark Richt will certainly is aware of and will look to do so. They've been averaging over 200 yards on the ground this year, and they have several running backs that can get the job done. I think that will help them with the quarterback situation as well. And then you have to look at North Carolina coming back off a terrible loss against the Hokies. Trubisky, he threw over 400 yards the previous 3 games, and then came into against the Hokies and threw 58 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. First two interceptions of the year. That UNC offense was not prepared for the weather, and they fully admit that. And, the Hokies were just better prepared. Their defense was better, and they just came better prepared, especially in a, weather kind of atmosphere like it was last year in Chapel Hill. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen again. Their offense, it's too good, and it's going to start clicking. It's going to be a bounce back. Great weather down in Miami. The pass game certainly will be a key factor. Trubisky, see if he can get that kind of performance out of his head, get back to what he was doing. Also with, a healthy running back core, Elijah Hood back with TJ Logan. Logan has been very solid this year, picking up big yardage for the Heels. But, along with Elijah Hood, I think that'll also help there. This one I've really gone back and forth with, and I can see the Heels, they're 3-0 against top 25 teams on the road right now. But Miami, they're a lot better than what they were last year. They should have won against Florida State last week. I think if I had to go with the gut feeling there, I think they put that loss behind them against Florida State, come back with even bigger aspirations in this one. This is eventually, obviously, I think this is going to be like an elimination game in the Coastal Division. I think Miami wins in a close one. I think it's like a 7-point, 6.5-point favorite. I still think it's going to be a close one between these, but if I had to pick, I'd go with Miami against, especially with the rushing attack, balance attack. But that is a young defense. And that offense from UNC, don't underestimate them. I could certainly see them coming out with another road victory against another top 25 team. So this one, I'm going to pick Miami, but this is like kind of a flip of a coin with this one, just gut feeling on that one. And then the last one in the ACC, Virginia Tech at Syracuse. These teams have actually played since 2003. When you look at these two teams, you have to look at the Virginia Tech defense. The defense ranks them 4th in the nation in total yards per game. They also 3rd in the nation in completion percentage. Certainly something that the Syracuse will want to do with their quarterback there. Quarterback play there. Their offense, has been pretty good, I would say. They can move the ball, pick up big yardage, but I just don't see them doing the same thing against a Tech defense that dominated last week. Have shown in the first half of the season that they're the real deal, and I think they rank in the top 10 or at least top 20 in pretty much almost all defensive categories this year. I think this Tech defense is for real. Right now, I think it's I don't even know what the line is for this one, but it's not close. I don't see the Hokies stumbling or looking ahead. I think their motto has been, take one game at a time, looking for that 1-0 record each week. I think they get it done in a big way. I don't think Syracuse, to be honest with you, score is 17 points. Maybe they might score that, if that. But I think behind Gerard Evans, who's been playing outstanding this year, been under the radar, but now is catching, now moving in the positive direction between all in the ACC and in the country for his play. I think they have the Hokies heading in the right direction, and I think Virginia Tech wins big in this one. So those are the ACC kind of wrap up this Saturday morning. Got some great games going on in the ACC, but there's also some great games going on around the country. Obviously, there's two games that a lot of people that will be looking at that will be on prime time. Taking a look at it is Alabama versus Tennessee. It's a 3:30 kickoff. This obviously is one of the biggest games in the SEC. I think this could be actually a rematch. Well, I shouldn't say rematch. This will be one of two matches between these two teams because they could meet up in the SEC championship. Alabama's won the last 9 games and owns a 24-20 record against the Vols. Obviously, there's going to be the heated, talk of, Lane Kiffin, who used to coach at Tennessee, now the offensive coordinator at Alabama. Tennessee, I think, has shown that they are the real deal. Coming off a loss against Texas A&M, it just needs to show that they need to come off on a better start. Their defense needs to step up, especially against Alabama. Alabama's defense has always been there. They look to score on defense, create turnovers, looking to go the other way. They certainly will be doing the same thing. This will be a heated rivalry. It will be in Tennessee. The run defense for Tennessee has to show up. I think they're giving up over 200 yards a game this season, something that has been kind of a question mark there, something Alabama might look to take advantage of. If I had to pick on that one, I would go with Alabama. It's hard to go against Nick Saban. I think this would be a close one, though. We get with that hostile crowd in Tennessee, but I think Tennessee is the real deal this year. They've kind of proven it, even though they're coming off that loss. I really like their what they've been doing this year, and they've already beaten Florida. Even though they lost last week, can the Cinderella season kind of continue? If they can beat Florida and Alabama in the year, that's could be definitely one of their best years since they've won the national championship back in the 90s there. Another game that I'm going to be looking at Ohio State at Wisconsin. Meyer has won 19 straight road games. The Buckeyes have won the last 4 between these two. Since 2002, there's only been one game that the Badgers actually won in 2010. There's only been one game that has not been decided by 10 points or less at Wisconsin. Obviously the Badgers are going to have that 59-0 beatdown from the other year in the Big Ten championship game on their mind, but that will certainly be posted all along their locker room. Ohio State owns a 26-11 record on the road at Wisconsin. If you like defense, I would look at this game. The Buckeyes are ranked number 8 in rushing defense with 98 yards per game given up against their opponents, and Wisconsin ranks number 3 at 90 yards per game. The only thing that I think the Buckeyes will test is Wisconsin is giving up over 200 yards on defense in the passing games. And with J.T. Barrett, I think he has to play a little bit better. He's been a little quiet lately, but he definitely has the weapons, especially in the backfield and on the outside, that he can get some damage done in the passing game. Ohio State's only given up 148 yards in the passing game. That's number 5 in the nation. If I had to pick this one, I'm not gonna doubt Urban Meyer. I think both number 1, number 2 prevail on the road. Tough matchups though. I can see both of them coming down, between 10 points or less. But I think both road teams will win. Some other games, that you might want to might intrigue you there. Nebraska at Indiana. Nebraska's 5-0. It's been a while since they've been 6-0 that I remember. They're number 10 silently. They're only a 3.5 favorite at Indiana. Indiana's 3-2. That's a game kind of to watch in the top 25. And then number 12 Ole Miss versus number 22 Arkansas. Ole Miss, obviously is coming off those first 2 losses with Florida State and Alabama. They've been strong though, and the other ones, Arkansas is coming off their loss against Alabama, where they gave up, got manhandled in that game there. Didn't really have a shot too much, and they're looking to bounce back. If they lose this game, they could fall to 0-3 in the conference. And pretty much eliminate them, and could be heading down south for the Razorbacks in that one. Another one that kind of just caught my attention was number 20 West Virginia versus Texas Tech. West Virginia's silently kind of been moving up, top 25. They're undefeated, but it always intrigues me when they go up against someone like Texas Tech, especially with Patrick Mahomes. If you haven't seen him play at quarterback, he's put up over 2,200 yards and 20 touchdowns. He slings the ball everywhere. And against 2 teams in the Big 12 that like to put up points, always wanted to kind of watch for. Those are some of the games that I'm just kind of be looking at. Kind of caught my eye just looking at the schedule, especially the two primetime games: Alabama, Tennessee, Ohio State, Wisconsin. Should be a great weekend for some college football in the ACC. Like I said, continue to look back. We'll review some of the games from this weekend on this beautiful weekend. I hope you enjoy your weekend, some college football, and we'll talk some recaps next week and power rankings and all things ACC. Other than that, go grab yourself a cold one, enjoy some beautiful weather wherever you are around the area, and enjoy some college football here with all things ACC. Have a great morning.